Hi folks, I hope you're really well. Welcome to another little video. And I'm just about to cross Marsden Moor. I'm on Huddersfield Road. And I came this way on the Trans-Pennine Trail a couple of weeks ago and just realised what a fantastic local climb this is, and I don't do it enough. So I was out here last night doing a little bit of training, very heavy inverted commas, and it's a beautiful Saturday afternoon, so I thought I'd grab the opportunity for another quick spin. In this little video I'm going to talk a little bit about setting up your road bike or your first road bike, and specifically I'm going to talk about saddle, stem, hoods and levers. And you know, I hope to share a little bit of the benefit of my experience and such noisy buggers, aren't they? Let me find a quiet spot and then we'll get into the video. Oh my word, look at these views. Let me turn the camera around. Right, let me just preface this video with a bit of a disclaimer. I'm not a professional bike fitter. You don't say. I hear you shouting at the screen. And I'm not even a particularly serious or knowledgeable road cyclist, if I'm being honest. But all the bikes that I own and ride, I can ride them all day long without any discomfort or any aches and pains. What I do on my bikes is spend quite a lot of time thinking about the setup and making sure that they're as comfortable as they possibly can be. I think most people are, certainly my experience has been, you kind of bundled out of the store and left to kind of figure it out for yourself. And the things I'm going to go through in this video they're really obvious to me now, but I know that when I first bought a road bike they really weren't obvious at all. And you know, somewhere along the way, by figuring it out for myself and sort of chatting to various different people, you know, I worked out some things that I think make the bike more comfortable for me. So they're the kind of things I'm going to share in this video. So right, let me find a little spot and we'll talk about saddle. It might be at the bottom of this massive descent coming up. This is amazing, look at this. Let's put the hammer down and I'll see you at the bottom. So I would suggest, in terms of saddle, there's kind of two things you can play around with and get maximum comfort. And one is obviously saddle height. So, you know, a general rule of thumb is if you're sitting on the saddle and you extend your leg down and put your heel on the bottom of the pedal, your leg should be kind of straight with your heel resting on there. And that gives you like a ballpark appropriate saddle height. And then you can make your kind of micro adjustments from there. But the other thing that people don't spend enough time thinking about, in my experience, is the kind of forward and backward adjustment, and also the tilt as well. So, you know, start off in the middle, start off with a flat, it's not a flat tilt, but you know, start off with your saddle as level as you can get it, and then sit on it. But in my kind of experience, you really want to be, it sounds really silly to say, really obvious to say, but you really want to make sure your sit bones are on the kind of the comfortable part of your saddle. And you know, if you're a male, you kind of want to make sure you don't have pressure on your you know, your doodahs. And if your saddle's uncomfortable, don't just throw it away and buy a new one. Really think about the position, kind of forward and back. If your saddle is kind of throwing you to the front of the bike and it's putting loads of weight on your hands, it may need tilting sort of a little bit more level. It may need moving back a little bit, but really do go out with your bike tool or your Allen key and muck around with the saddle, both the saddle height and the saddle kind of fore, aft and tilt, and get it sort of set up so that it's maximally comfortable. And by comfortable, I think my view on that would be, if you're on the bike for over an hour and you're not noticing any discomfort, you know, coming from that contact point, I'd suggest you're probably starting to get that set up pretty well. And also, if you're on a bike over an hour the next day, you're not kind of feeling any untoward discomfort, again, that suggests to me that you've kind of got your saddle pretty much sorted out. What you might find again is, when you sort your saddle out and then you go and sort out other bits of your bike, you might need to come back to that and do a little bit more. But yeah, there's a kind of a height, there's a front and back movement that I don't think people spend nearly enough time kind of experimenting with and sorting out. And then you've obviously got your tilt as well. I think my preferred position is a little bit in the middle, maybe slightly to the back, and I have my tilt down a little bit. You know, it's not that noticeable, but I think my sort of saddle is slightly off level, and that just works for me. But you know, that's the result of lots and lots of little rides with my bike tool, just making those little micro adjustments so I get it kind of dialed in. Okay, so that's the saddle. I'm going to talk about the stem next, then the hoods, and then the brake levers. But I've got quite a ride today, so I'm going to make a bit more progress and then we'll get into the stem. It's grass cutting time up here in the Pennines, and it's the reason I wake up every morning wanting to scratch my eyes out with hay fever at the moment. Anyway, stem, yeah. Again, you know, caveat, I'm not an expert here, I'm just saying things that I found in my experience. But in my experience, a lot of road bikes are sold with stems that are far too long. Added to the fact that I think generally I'm quite long-legged and short. I have a relatively long legs and a relatively short torso. So all of the bikes that I buy, I find that I do need to change the stem. I'm also nearly 50, so I have the flexibility of an average nearly 50-year-old. And I know if you go on YouTube, you'll find people that can scratch the back of their head with their toes and are really flexible. But you know, the average older cyclist, I think, would benefit a little bit from raising the stem, raising the bars just a touch on most kind of standard road bikes. So what I tend to go for is I shorten the stem by about 30mm, and I raise the bars a little bit by buying or swapping to a stem that has a little bit of a rise. So I have on this bike came with 100, it was either 100 or 110mm stem, I forget the specs now, but I swapped that to a 70mm stem with you might be able to just see a 17-degree rise. So what that does is it raises the bars and it shortens the reach, and that's, I think, generally something to think about and look at. And it's such an easy part to swap out as well. I mean, these cost about 20 quid. You know, you can spend a lot more obviously, but it's a very easy thing to adjust on a bike, and it's probably going to make a big difference if you're finding that it's a bit too much of a stretch to get to the bars. So yeah, as well as the saddle adjustments that I've just mentioned, do have a think about swapping the stem and trying to get the bars as far away from you as is comfortable, and as high or as low as is comfortable. I mean, you can also invert stems as well if you want to lower the bars. You know, you might find that you want a more aggressive racing setup. But again, just think about what works for you, and don't be afraid to actually change that. You know, the stem that comes with a bike out of a shop is very, very generic, and it's not, you know, it's blind to your biomechanics and your measurements. It's absolutely something you should think about changing, just again to get that maximum comfort out of your bike. Ladies and gentlemen, we will shortly be starting our descent into Sowerby Bridge, going down some absolutely bonkers, almost vertical roads to get down into the bottom of the valley. The roads will look pretty flat on the GoPro, but we're about to test our rim brakes to the max. But yeah, I can see across towards Halifax, you can kind of see the tower, Sowerby Bridge, Happy Valley territory obviously, and then you've got the Calder Valley snaking all the way back towards Lancashire. Let's get down to the bottom, and then we'll have a quick chat about the hoods and the levers. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. I can't describe how steep this is. I know it won't look it on the camera, but if you ever want to test your rim brakes, just drop down into Sowerby Bridge. Whew. I forgot about the climb out of Sowerby Bridge up to the Valley Road. Oh my god, that is brutal. Okay, so I've been on the bike now for about 2 hours, and you know, nothing hurts more than it should, if that makes sense. Legs are definitely feeling the hills and the miles now, but I've got no other kind of aches and pains, and as I said, that's really because I've spent quite a lot of time just trying to set my bike up so that it's really, really comfortable for the way kind of I like to ride and my kind of measurements and everything. So just talking about the two other bits I was going to mention in this video, so the hoods and the levers. Again, when you get a bike out of the bike shop, these hoods will have been put on just vaguely, you know, on the bars, roughly in the right position. But do feel free, if you just lift up the kind of plastic protector things or the leather protector things, you'll see a way to loosen them, and then you can bring them higher up the bar, you can bring them lower up the bar, and you can also, at the stem, you can sort of change the position of the bar as well. So I think that needs a little bit of attention as well, depending on where on the bar you like to have your hoods. Like some people, if you're on the drops quite a lot, if that's your sort of preferred way of riding, you might want the hoods a little bit further down, or you might want to rotate your bar down a little bit. I ride mostly with my hands on the bars, either in sort of that position, or sometimes I'll use the side of my hand and I'll put my hand right on the top there. I find that actually a really, really comfortable, nice position for myself. So for me, the hoods are a little bit higher than you might see on other bikes. Not, you know, excessive. Most of my riding is in that position or that position. So it's important for me that the hoods are comfortable predominantly in that position. The other thing, motorbikes everywhere. The other thing that I do, which I think is really worth kind of experimenting with, is just angling your hood slightly inwards. You might almost not be able to see that, but there's just a little micro adjustment that I've made, putting my hood slightly kind of pointing inwards, I suppose, towards the what would you say, towards the centre line where the front wheel is. And if you think about the way your arm falls sort of next to your body, your you know, unless you're some kind of missing link, your hand kind of rotates. If your hand's just resting at the side of your body, your hand sort of rotates inward slightly, and that position, if you try and replicate on the bars, I find super comfortable. So, you know, again, don't feel like the way these are positioned out off a bike shop or out of the box are in any way appropriate for the way you want to ride. And, you know, spend a bit of time and get them to the right position. You know, sometimes it does mean ruining a length of bar tape if you're making sort of big adjustments in terms of where you want to put them on the bar, but it's really worth it, as I said, for comfort. You know, you don't want to be spending time on a bike that's forcing you into a position that you're not comfortable with. So yeah, definitely I would suggest hoods are again one of those kind of main bits of the bike, one of those main contact points that it's really worth spending a little bit of time and doing all those micro adjustments on. Now again, you might be looking at the position of my levers on my bars and thinking, well, that's wrong, or, you know, different to how I have my bike set up. As I said, I'm not a professional bike fitter whatsoever, but this is a position that suits my kind of riding. It suits where I have my hands for the majority of the time. And as I said, I have complete, you know, all-day comfort riding with this kind of setup. No wrist pain whatsoever, no neck, no shoulder pain, etc, etc. So again, it's about making adjustments yourself and finding that position that's that kind of works for you. You know, even if you have a bike fitter or somebody far more experienced who tells you to set your bike up in a particular way, and you find that that's not comfortable, that's not the right setup for you, of course. But yeah, as I said, just making these levers have a shorter reach and just kind of shortening that gap. And I do see people riding bikes on the drops with levers that are just completely out of reach, and they're obviously more set up for that kind of the top hand position. And as I mentioned, I don't spend a lot of time on the drops, but when I am in that position, I definitely want access to the brakes, you know, particularly because when I am in that position, I'll be going some fair old speed. So there's no way I'd want to be in that position without actually having access to the brakes. So, you know, think about the position you'll be in when you've got your hands on the drops, and just making sure you've got comfortable access to those levers. You can change that distance. So again, you might find out of the box or out of the shop that lever's somewhere like there, but there is an adjustment you can make to kind of shorten that reach, and that's particularly important if you've got, you know, I've got pretty small hands. You know, if you're like that, you really need to have that reach within reach, so to speak. You can do it, well, you do it in various places depending on the types of kit that you're using, but on my 105s, which I guess are kind of mechanical rim 105s, again, I don't know the exact spec, I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's actually at the top under this piece of the hood. So if you peel that back, you'll find a little adjustment that you can make with I think it's like a 2mm Allen key, and clockwise just moves that lever in towards the bar. Of course, there's a whole myriad of other things that you can look at in terms of bike fit and bike comfort. Everything from, you know, the position of your cleats on your shoes if you're wearing clipless, if you are using clipless pedals, to the PSI, you know, how much pressure you're putting in your tyres. That has a big impact on comfort. To the width of your handlebars and the sort of relationship between that width and your kind of shoulder width. There's all sorts of other things that you can look at. As I said, I've just focused on kind of 4 key bits of the bike and kind of contact points. These are things that I really wish I'd known when I first, you know, got my first road bike, wheeled it out of the shop, and I sort of adjusted the seat height and then thought, well, that's it, there's nothing more I can do. It'll either be great or it won't. And there's so much more you can do, and there's so many more adjustments you can make on a bike, you know, whatever budget, however inexpensive or however expensive it is. And it's very worthwhile doing that. And you want to get to the point, as I think I said a couple of times, where, you know, you can spend all day on this thing, You can spend all day on your bike, and beyond the usual sort of tiredness from the physical activity, you've not got any unnecessary sort of aches and pains. So yeah, as ever, thank you so much for watching this video. If you've hung on to the end, extra special thank you and well done. Please do consider liking and subscribing if you'd be so kind. It really helps me out. It's fantastic to have you following along and part of this channel that I'm starting to put together. Otherwise, sun's going down and I need to get a shimmy on and get home. I've probably got about another hour to go to get home. But yeah, from up here in the Pennines, please stay safe, take care, and happy cycling. Bye.